Throughout the many months of me building PCs, constructing them together and showcasing them off on my YouTube channel, they're not as scary as people make it out to be. Within a group I am in on Facebook, there was a particular post that came out to me. A newcomer into the PC building world, didn't have a clue on where to start and didn't have a clue on where to begin. So I thought I'll take the idea and put it into a video today, explaining what PC components are and what they do. Like myself, explaining it simply to you guys, it shouldn't be hard. So with enough said, let's roll the intro. Hey, what is up, you love people? Welcome back to the channel. And before we get into the video, I just want to plug out that if you are new and you do want to learn more about PCs and tech, then make sure to like, subscribe, turn those notification bells on. You know, the good stuff that gets the channel going, as I'll be pumping out these type of videos every 2 weeks on a Wednesday at 7 PM, plus gaming every Monday at 7 PM as well. And most importantly, if you do have any questions that I do not answer in the video, then make sure to catch me live every Saturday and Sunday at 7 PM. With enough said, let's jump straight into this video. So, PC components explained. The reason why I did this video, as I explained at the start, is I want to educate people who are getting straight into PC building or PC gaming, and just give them some sort of clear insight onto what they're going to be dealing with, what they're going to be handling with, etc, etc. So, how I'm going to be breaking down this video, if I throw it up on screen right now, what you're seeing is what I'm going to be going through, what I'm going to be talking about, and in those sections I'm going to be throwing up chapters. So if you do want to click straight to that component or that part of the video, then make sure to go and do so. But if you are here for the long run, thank you very much. That means a hell of a lot to me. So first things first, you should ask yourself these two simple questions before going into the build. What is the purpose you're trying to achieve for this build? What is your budget? The reason why I ask these two simple questions is that when it comes to laying out the blueprints of your PC build and what you're trying to achieve, you really got to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Am I doing it for just work purposes or gaming purposes? If it comes to work purposes, then you don't really have to focus on the GPU as much or the graphics card. But when it comes to a gaming PC, then it's a complete different end of the spectrum. And the reason why I talk about budget is because you really want to understand how much you're spending and how much you want to spend in terms of reaching your goals. Don't get me wrong, PC building is a beautiful thing to get into, but is not the cheapest by all means necessary. Don't get me wrong, you can get a lot of cheap PC builds out there, or maybe some cheap pre-builds, and you can just whack a GPU in and on the way you go. But if you do really want to lay out the hard work and go from the ground up, then you really got to understand what your budget is and how much you're willing to put in to your PC build. GPU. The necessity, the absolute graphics driver for your gaming needs. This is something that I put at the top of the list because you really want to focus on your graphics card first and work your way out. You really got to understand as well on what kind of games you really want to play. If you are planning on playing battle royale games, nothing too fancy or too graphics intensive, and maybe some MMOs like Smite, League of Legends, then maybe you shouldn't go spending a crazy amount on a GPU like a 2070 Super or a 2080 Ti or any of the 30 series cards. Then again, if you are planning on playing more intensive games like Warzone, Cold War, and some AAA titles, maybe like Tomb Raider or some Borderlands 3, then maybe consider upping your budget. Resolution settings are quite important as well, because it does dictate what kind of GPU you can expand out and go for. Because if you are planning on playing in 1080p settings and not going any higher than that, then don't have to spank out a lot of cash in order to achieve those needs. You know what I mean? Look at YouTube benchmarks. There's a lot of videos on your dedicated graphics card that you're trying to get or that you do want to get. Look at those benchmarks, have a close evaluation of it, and understand if that is something that you want. If so, then by all means, blimmin' go for it. CPU and motherboard. There are three different sizes that you really got to take in when it comes to purchasing motherboards: full ATX, micro ATX, and mini ATX. I can't get this blimmin' ring finger up. Okay, I'll do it this way. Right, the reason why I actually talk about this is because once downscaling to a mini ITX, let's say, you are going to be sacrificing a lot of connectors and a few PCIe slots for your graphics card and your Wi-Fi card. Take that into mind. Consider what features you're going to use, what you're going to utilize those features for. Are you going to get 2 GPUs? Are you going to get a Wi-Fi card and some extra bits and bobs? then maybe going ATX is an option. But if you are not worried about having extra PCIe slots, then maybe micro ATX and mini ITX is your way to go. Talking about motherboards, you are going to be dealing with two companies, AMD and Intel, and these are quite important because when it comes to socket support, Intel supports something called LGA and AMD supports AM4 and AM3 and so on. With AMD, you're going to be rocking the CPU socket, which is the thing right in the middle. That's all empty because the pins are actually on the CPU itself. And with an Intel board like this, you are going to be dealing with the pins being internal and actually on the board. Beware that and take that into mind, because you don't want to be getting a Intel CPU and an AMD motherboard, because you are going to be itching your head, kind of like, oh, where's the pins at? You know what I mean? So don't make that mistake. CPU. There are two main companies out there, AMD and Intel. It all links back to the question of what is the purpose of your build. If you are going to go strictly with gaming, no streaming, no encoding, no rendering, then going with Intel is your best friend, because single thread performance wise, they are really good. They've always been on top, but with gaming, they are really good as well. If you are looking something that is gaming as well with streaming, encoding, rendering, then AMD is also your best man. He's going to be there with you all the time. I don't know if you tell, I am a bit of an AMD fanboy. But AMD recently, with their scores, they have been on top of Intel with their gaming performance, and you get to see some interesting scores. I've thrown it up on the screen right now. So these two things are worth considering when it comes to getting a CPU. With the CPU and motherboard out of the way, we now focus on the RAM, known as random access memory. When you open any programs, the OS actually stores it in RAM. Then once you shut down your PC, everything that was stored in your RAM is then cleared, or even if you shut down any of the software that you got open. The reason why I actually talk about this, because it is very important when it comes to gaming, because if you have a lot of apps open in the background and you don't have enough memory to hold that, then you are going to experience a lot of stutters, and you're going to experience a lot of lag, and you might be beating your head and you might be scratching like, what's going on? Like, why is it freaking out? Don't worry, it's just because you don't have enough RAM. A lot of modern day tiles are taking up a lot of RAM, and it used to be the minimum of 8 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, but is now known to be 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. It is the absolute baseline for gaming today. I wouldn't really recommend going with 8 gigabytes because you are going to experience a lot of trouble, especially if you're trying to run games like Warzone, Cold War, a lot of AAA titles. It takes up a lot of memory. It does take up, for me, it takes up about like 37 to 40% when I'm running like higher intense games. So beware that in mind. With RAM as well, it is very important, and it links back to the motherboard. And with your motherboard, if you have 4 slots, then that is really good. But if you do have 2 slots, then you are going to be restricted in terms of taking advantage of dual channel memory and restricting on the amount of capacity that you can gain in your PC. Don't get me wrong, getting 2 DIMM slots on the motherboard isn't too bad. Sticking with 16 gigabytes is okay, but to really future-proof yourself, you do want to get 4 DIMM slots on the motherboard. Why? Because you can take advantage of dual channel memory, and also you can increase your capacity further down the line. But DDR4 is the way to go. DDR3 memory in a DDR4 supported motherboard will not work. Trust me, I've tried it before. Taking in the factor of RAM and the motherboard, DDR4 is the way to go as the mainstream standard. But in terms of your budget and how much you're willing to spend, then DDR3 might be your option, depending on what the motherboard supports as well. Right, storage. Don't get it confused with memory. We use memory as RAM, and we use storage as what you store your OS and your games on. Hard drives are not the way to go in terms of putting your OS and Windows into it, but it is definitely used for storing games, video files, photo files, music, etc. What you really want to invest in is an SSD. There are different types of SSD. You've got SATA SSD, you've got NVMe and .2 SSDs. Really, trust me, don't get it confused. SATA SSD 2.5 inch is the way to go. It's probably the bog standard for anyone who's starting out on a first build. For first time builders, my advice is to go with a 240GB SSD or even 120GB SSD, because you're only going to be using it for your Windows and OS, nothing more. And you're going to be saving your hard drive for your games, video files, photo files, and music. Hard drive maybe goes something with like 2TB, but with the SSD goes something smaller like 120GB or 240. PSU, this is the main powerhouse that makes your PC start up. So understanding your wattage and compared to how much consumption your GPU and CPU is doing, really consider the amount of watts you're putting into your PC. Also, understanding the certification on the PSU. Understanding the certification of the PSU is very, very important. I'm going to throw it up on screen right now. There are loads of different levels to these certifications. They're known as 80+. So you've got 80+ white, which is the lowest, 80+ bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and I believe titanium, which I've never seen on the market before. I've only seen 80+ platinum. But, you know, it doesn't matter. As long as it's 80+ bronze or higher, you are going to be future-proofing yourself in terms of PSU. Right. Case choice. Now, this is really important. It all links back to the previous components as well, because if you are going to get a motherboard that's full ATX, then you're only stuck with a full mid-tower case. This is a full mid-tower case. As you can see, the motherboard inside is a full ATX motherboard, so you can't go any smaller than that. And this is getting really heavy, so I'm just going to lightly place it down on the floor. Oh, right. That is something you're going to be getting if you are going to get a full ATX motherboard. With a micro ATX and a mini ATX, you are going to be getting smaller cases. You are eligible for smaller cases. As you've seen in my previous build guide with the Thermaltake S100TG, that is a micro ATX case, and you can fit micro ATX motherboards and mini ATX motherboards as well. So airflow is quite important. With this at the front, you don't see many holes that provides a lot of airflow or air channels to the case. That is called a negative airflow. Because what you're essentially doing, you're trapping a lot of the heat inside the PC. It increases all the heat of the components, and it could lead to a thing called thermal throttling. With thermal throttling is basically when your CPU, your GPU and RAM gets to a certain degree of temperature before it downclocks itself in order for the PC to actually run. So when it comes to looking for a case, don't look for anything with a closed off front. Look for something that has a mesh front instead. When I talk about the front, I'll show you. I actually mean this. So yeah, look for something that's a bit more clear and a bit more mesh front. Beware, it does attract more dust, but in terms of keeping your PC more cool, for more room of overclocking, I would throw that risk out there. Right, the OS is something that I put at the bottom of the list because, you know, it's not entirely important. With the OS, you can get it free from the Microsoft store, but you are going to be stuck with this stupid watermark in the bottom right corner, which for me, it doesn't bother me at all. And for you, it might not bother you at all as well. So with OS, it's free. You don't need to go out and pay a stupid Windows key for it, unless if you're that desperate to get rid of the watermark. By all means, go for it, but I wouldn't really waste your money on it, you know. And with a few extras in mind, you've got yourself fans, some cooling, and some RGB. Simply, case fans, it just brings in an amount of air into your PC and the amount of air it shoots out. So ideally, I go with 2 fans at the front, 1 exhaust fan at the back, so it brings in enough airflow to cool the components down. And as heat rises, because that's how it does, that's how it goes, it will be naturally exerted by 1 fan at the back. Cooling, let's talk about cooling. So you got 2 different types of cooling. You got liquid cooling and you got air cooling. Air cooling is starting to come back into mainstream because there's a lot of errors with liquid cooling if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Like wrong fittings can equal leaks and explosions. Putting wrong different type of fluids can lead to corrosion, and there's a lot of problems with it. Air cooling is as simple as attaching it to your motherboard, plugging the fan headers in, and then turning the PC on. And let's talk about RGB. You know, it's something that is kind of like, it really entices a lot of people, but also annoys a lot of people. The reason why I include this is because it's something that is a personal preference. For me, I do like RGB, and I've got a red, white, blue theme going on with mine because my case is ice white, so I decided to put cold blue and red as well to kind of spice things up. But for you lot, you might like something a bit more stealthier, you might not actually like RGB in your build, and I completely understand that. So it's a personal preference thing. There you go. I believe I covered everything, and if you did stick around to the end of the video, thank you very much. That means a hell of a lot to me. You lot are the real OGs. In the comments down below, let me know how your first build ever went. Did it go smooth sailing for you, or did you have a lot of problems? I would really love to know. And if you did find this video educational and you did enjoy it, then make sure to smash like down below, and I will catch you on tomorrow's live stream. Peace.